A cult whose following believed in black magic and human sacrifice believed that the more their victims suffered, the greater their reward. Their leader was very dangerous and believed to be the chosen one from birth. His name is Adolfo Constanzo, and this is his story. Child, I think that's his name because, you know, Spanish ain't really mama's first language.
I've worked 35 years, and you can never prepare for something like this. We were dealing with the unbelievable. We were dealing with people that believed in human sacrifices, people that just had no heart.
My face is so dry. Drier than wet. You got it. A nun's vagina. Adolfo was born in Miami, Florida, November 1st, 1962. I mean, yeah, technically he's Scorpio, but we really just don't even have to talk about that part today. Not much is known about his father, but he was born to a woman by the name of Delia Gonzalez, who was a Cuban immigrant and a very, very interesting woman, to say the least. She gave birth to Adolfo at the age of 15. After giving birth to Adolfo, she eventually had 3 more children, and after the passing of her husband, she relocated to San Juan, Puerto Rico, where she goes on to remarry there. Now, the mother was a very, very religious person. She was also very spiritual and just into all of the things. So she, of course, raised her children to be that way, to just be very much into higher power, spirituality, religion, and just all of the things, right? Adolfo was baptized Catholic and he was an altar boy, so he was very much involved in the church. But he would also accompany his mother on trips to Haiti to learn about Haitian voodoo, which she was very much into as well. In 1972, she moves the family back to Miami, Florida, and not long after they get back to Miami, all of a sudden her second husband passes away. This left them with a nice little chunk of money. So as a teenager, he became apprenticed to a local sorcerer and began practicing a religion called Palo. I believe that's how you pronounce it, P-A-L-O. Now, all I know is what I read, and from what I read, it's an Afro-Caribbean religion that is considered to be on the darker side. Like I said, I don't know too much, but from what I read, I know that they practice rituals that often include animal sacrifice, so I don't know if that's the reason why it's viewed as like a dark practice or not, or if it's really just some dark stuff going on. I don't know. I just know that's what they do. They practice in sacrificing of the animals. They also use human bones, but human sacrifice is said to be like strictly forbidden. Now, husband number 3 was very much into this religious practice, and he also was a drug dealer. I'm just, sis out here collecting ornaments. She out here collecting the men's like rings on Sonic, and here I am still trying to find Blue a father. Tragic. Now, as far as his relationship with his mother, they were very close, and they were close for a real particular reason. She believed her son to be the chosen one, and she would often practice these rituals that would dedicate him to like the higher powers and these gods and various spirits who were of the higher power persuasion. She would invoke spirits to protect him. She also believed that her son had very, very strong clairvoyant abilities and that he could speak to the dead. So there's that. I'm not sure what led her to believe this was true about her kid, but that's just what she believed when it came to her son, Adolfo. She also believed him to have some kind of psychic capability. They both claimed that he accurately predicted the attempt made on Ronald Reagan in 1981 later on down the line. Because she believed her son to be the chosen one, she began grooming him at a very early age. This was grooming him for something much more dark and sinister than fortune telling and fortune cookies and reading the future. She was like, no, you're destined for more than that, son. Beginning when he was just a very small boy, the mother would force her son to capture and like torture small animals and sacrifice them, and she would praise him for his cruelty when he did so. She would reinforce the idea that what he was doing was right and that he was the chosen one, and she was really proud of him for these acts. And so that kind of, you know, made him feel like this was the thing to do. I mean, he's a kid, so you at that age you really just know what your parents tell you, really. So he believed that what he was doing was right. He didn't see anything wrong with it because that's really just all he knew. At this point, they were living in a really like small apartment, and they really didn't get along with the neighbors like at all. They would often get into confrontations with their neighbors, and the neighbors started to complain that after these confrontations, they would always notice a small dead animal like outside their door. Now, mind you, they lived in a very small apartment, right? So after this had happened a couple of times and people were noticing the trend, they alerted authorities to tell them about the incident and just was like, y'all need to check this out because this is not normal. I don't know if it's a threat. I don't know what they're doing over there. But every time we get into an argument about the noise, there's the dead animal in front of my door. Honey, police come out to investigate and just check out the scene. And when they search the small apartment, they retrieve over 27 dead animals that were just in there. And the apartment itself was in shambles. There were, in addition to the animal carcasses, there was feces all over the floor. There was blood from the animals all over the floor. Just nastiness, child. Just disgusting. Needless to say, sis is arrested on site. She gets out eventually. When her son turns 21, she performs the final initiation on her son, right? This is supposed to just really level him up and take him to like the next level. During this initiation, she presents him with a like iron cauldron, which was widely used in the religion that they practiced, the black magic religion. I entered a picture of one. It's kind of like that thing, like that cliche thing that they show witches making their little witch's brew with, that like big pot thing. Anyway, she gives him that and she tells him that it holds the essence of spirits. And how it works is that the priest, which he was leveling up to be, must sacrifice the appropriate items to this cauldron, and in exchange they would receive various blessings. Now at this point, he is officially a full-fledged priest. He was said to be a very good-looking man. He ain't really my type. I insert some photos around this time so you can see what the hype was about, because he started doing some modeling gigs in Miami. He's offered a modeling opportunity in Mexico City. So he relocates there and he's working as a priest and he's working as a model, which is a very odd side hustle for a priest, but whatever. But his main income came in from him being Apollo priest. He opens up a shop in Mexico City's Pink District, and this area was known for being very welcoming to the LGBT community. He identified himself as bisexual. So there in his little shop, he performed all kind of rituals. He would do fortune tellings, healings, among other things of this nature. For pay, of course, because that's where the bulk of his income came from. And he made a lot of money. The bulk of his clients were very high profile and rich drug dealers. They were extremely powerful and wealthy people. A lot of his clientele was also like local law enforcement, but the drug dealers in particular really interested him, as this was where the real money was. Child, it was where the money reside, okay? Where the money reside. Not only that, he found their operation to be very interesting. Now, he was a whole scammer out here because he had convinced the local drug dealers that he could cast spells that would make them invisible to law enforcement, and not only that, but bulletproof as well. And they really, child, they believed him. He told them that his psychic abilities would allow him to be able to tell them what days were good to move their product versus what days weren't, which days were high risk and low risk for them being busted. And in return for this information and this advisement, they paid him a lot of money. Like, they were very generous with the coins. In reality, unbeknownst to them, he also worked with local law enforcement, and they were a lot of his clientele as well. But what he was doing was taking a portion of the money he was receiving from the drug dealers and paying off law enforcement to avoid busting his clients. And so sis was really just a scammer, honestly. There was this area that was known as like the drug highway. This little ranch served as a stopping point along that highway. A lot of business was done at the ranch until all of a sudden, the owner, who was also a client of Adolfo's, passes away. And apparently when this happened, it left his whole operation just a mess. There was nobody who could immediately step up and just fill his shoes and make sure that they didn't skip a beat. Honey, they missed all the beats, okay? All of them. It was a mess. And they really did not know what to do or what direction to take the ranch in. Now, Adolfo sees this as an opportunity to step in and finally get his hands in the mix because, like I said, he really admired like the drug trade and all of the things that came with it. So he was very, very enthusiastic about this opportunity to finally get his hands in it. He comes forward and uses his alleged charismatic charm and lies. And I'm not really surprised because the Scorpio men, child, they'll do the same to you. You gotta watch out for them, really. The women, we not like that. We angels. We're the angels of the zodiac. But the men, child, watch it. Anyway, he convinces the Hernandez brothers, who are the two that are trying to hold things together down at the ranch, to believe not only in Paulo and his black magic practices, but his now twisted version of Paulo, which by this time he had begun to tweak to fit his own sadistic ideas and began practicing that. He had really gotten away from like the traditional Paulo. He approaches them with the same old lies that he had told everyone else, all of his other clients, that he could make them invisible to law enforcement, bulletproof, and just completely invincible to all of their enemies and anybody that really just was not on the team. Like, I'm just surprised that he could tell all these people they would be bulletproof and nobody tested out the theory, child. Good thing they didn't, because had they tried to test it out, somebody's ass would have been Swiss cheese. Now, not only that, but he convinces the Hernandez brothers to give him a shot at taking over the ranch and running the whole operation, which he is able to successfully convince them to do. Child, just using his Scorpio powers for bad, I'm telling you. The brothers very much believed in his powers and his capabilities. Also, he had, of course, quite the reputation amongst the criminals for the scam that he was running, being able to tell them what days to move their product safely and all of that. So they agreed to let him run it. I mean, they weren't doing that good of a job already anyway, and so I guess they figured, hell, why not, right? They instruct their team of employees to listen to Adolfo and just let them know that he was now running the show and who everybody would be answering to going forward. Everyone is on board to start following Adolfo, believing in his magical powers and psychic capabilities, and thus a cult is born. They brand themselves the Narco Satanists, and from there they began practicing and learning a lot of his rituals and his beliefs, which a lot of them were at this point made up. One of the first orders of business that he calls for the group to do is to go out and rob graves, because he said that he needed as many human bones to practice rituals and just do his works as possible. And of course, the team, they blindly oblige. They don't question him. In total, they hit 3 cemeteries in South Florida. You know, every cult leader, they need their, what is it called, like a harem of women. But like I said, he was openly bisexual, so he had his male and his female lovers, and they referred to him as El Padrino. I think that's how you say it. Anyway, it means Godfather. At least that's what I read. I didn't fact check that. I think that's what it means. Child, last video I said gatos means cookies. I probably can't be trusted with the translations. Now, among his lovers was a woman by the name of Sarah. Sarah was this beautiful college student. She was a young hot thing. He appoints her second in command, and they are advised to refer to her as La Madrina, which is godmother. Allegedly. Y'all ain't finna rip me to shreds, baby. All the translations are alleged, okay? A little bit about Sarah. Sarah was born September 6, 1964. She's a Virgo. Baby, we not going out alone today. We taking the Virgos with us. Sarah grew up in Mexico near the U.S. border. She came from a very middle-class family, but not much is known about her childhood, other than she went to college in Brownsville, Texas, and she was said to be a straight A student throughout her academic career, and she was also a cheerleader for the soccer team. Now, she became connected to the Mexican drug trade scene when she began dating one of the Hernandez brothers, who was now working for Adolfo, right? So, of course, that's how they met, when he began running the ranch, and I guess the Hernandez brother that she dated, I guess he couldn't have no say because homie was not his boss. But at some point, sis started hanging around the ranch, and she got less involved with the Hernandez brother and more involved with your boy Adolfo. Now, increasingly, all of the members or employees of the Hernandez brothers down at the ranch, they became more and more like obsessed with Adolfo and his teachings and his practices and all of his works and things. He is now their high priest. He is entangled in all of their business dealings. He gets them together regularly to perform all of these rituals. Now, he eased them into the rituals by getting them to perform animal sacrifices that he, of course, was claiming would not only protect them, but also help their business prosper and flourish. At first, they were just doing animals, but then Adolfo begins to tell the crew, if you really want to be protected and become empowered, that level of favor from the higher powers will come with a price far beyond monetary value or the value of these little animals' lives. He will tell them that the greater the sacrifice, the greater the power it bestowed, right? He hosts a meeting with the group and demands a human victim to offer up to the gods in exchange for even more power than he already held as their high priest. Now, the first of their victims were rivals in the business, which he knew that it would be easy to convince his followers to target them because of course, they were rivals. They'll probably be glad to, since they already view these people as their enemy. From there, they began targeting corrupt cops that were demanding more money and just being, I guess, a pain in the ass. His orders were always the same: to go capture the target, bring them back to the ranch where they would be ritualistically slain and offered up to the gods. Child, it was a mess. After this happened, they would chop them up and then place their parts inside the cauldron that his mother had bought him. He would then boil them, making this awful smelling brew. He would then instruct them to drink it and claim that in exchange, this is where like the powers of being invincible and bulletproof will come from. He would also take the vertebrae and make necklaces out of them, which he claimed was an added form of protection. Now, Elio Hernandez, who was the ex-lover of his new lover, Sarah, I guess in exchange for stealing his woman, he promotes the guy to executioner priest, which was considered to be an honorable position to have within the group. He brands Elio's chest and arms with sacred marks, and so now Elio is responsible for sending out his little flunkies to go collect their targets and bring them back. After his promotion, his first little order is to bring back the first male that they could find for sacrifice, no matter who it was. It was just like anybody. Bring back a male, a man. We need one pronto. So they go off the ranch to find somebody, and apparently they didn't know that the guy that they had selected was Elio's nephew. And Elio himself didn't even realize that it was his own nephew that had been brought back until after he slung his machete and took the boy's head off. So that was a fail. Child, at that point, Adolfo said, let me just take this back into my own hands, okay? In early March of 1989, he orders the crew to bring him an English-speaking man. Let me make that clear. Mark James Kilroy was a 21-year-old college student from Santa Fe, Texas. He was studying to be a doctor. When classes let out for spring break in March of 1989, he and 3 friends traveled to South Padre Island, Texas for spring break to just get like a little break away from school and have a nice little vacation. They make plans to spend their days at the beach and their nights at the bar, typical of college students and, you know, young people like myself, because I'm young still, a little bit. In the wee hours of the morning of March 14th, the group spots and surrounds Mark off of a side street where he had been bar hopping. At the time, he had stepped away from his friends to relieve himself outside. The crew, they see him, they approach him, and they flash these fake badges to him as if there's some form of like police or authorities, that he is under arrest for public intoxication. They grab Mark, throw him in the back of their van, and they take off. Now, they drive a couple of blocks away from where they pick Mark up, and they're waiting on a second car, which is the Hernandez brothers. While they are parked waiting on the brothers to arrive, Mark actually gets out of the car and takes off running. He escapes. But then one of them shouts out, "Freeze," in English, and out of instinct, he immediately stops running. Now, at this time, the Hernandez brothers, they pull up and they fake apprehend him once again, pretending that they are law enforcement, and they throw him in their car, this time placing duct tape over his eyes and mouth. Mark is taken back to the ranch where he is subject to just unspeakable cruelty. Child, they were just disgusting. Mark is ultimately slain by Adolfo, who takes a machete and chops the back of his head. The group members then remove his brain and spinal column and set it aside for their ritual. The rest of him is taken and buried on the ranch. The organs that they kept, they place in the cauldron, they make their brew, and they consume it. Now, this ritual they were made to believe would grant Adolfo infinite intelligence and wisdom, because the young boy was studying to be a doctor, so I guess by some weird way he had convinced them that he could take on the boy's intelligence. Just crazy and weird. Like these folks were sick and disgusting. Now, unfortunately for Adolfo and the crew, their victim selection, much like when they had accidentally chose e.l.f.'s nephew, was not the best victim choice. I mean, nobody would have been, but this one especially wasn't, because Mark's uncle was a special agent with the U.S. Customs Service, and as soon as his nephew is reported missing, agencies from both countries, the U.S. and Mexico, get involved, and they're on high alert. Now, believing himself to be as invincible as Adolfo made him to believe that he was, e.l.f.'s brother, Sarian, is out driving. He's on his way to the ranch, and he comes across a roadblock that is blocked off. Now, in his mind, y'all, he is invisible and invincible. The cops can't see him. So he tries to cruise his little car right past the roadblock, and of course, he ain't invincible. So they see him, and they're like, what are you doing? And instead of letting him continue to go through the roadblock, because of course it's blocked for a reason, one of the patrol cars goes behind him. He's thinking he's invisible, so he keeps on cruising until they turn those lights on and try to pull him over. But at that point, he does not stop. Instead of stopping, turning around his little car, or just heading in any other direction than where he was going, he decides to take off on a high-speed chase in the direction of the ranch. Just dumb. Unfortunately for the crew, the cops that were after Sarian and that arrived at the ranch are not cops that are on their payroll. They get to snooping around, and immediately they find 65 pounds of marijuana. They began searching the property, and then they stumble upon Adolfo's little ritual shed right out back. They had his little melting pot in it. When they see the cauldron and like all of the ritualistic stuff within the shed, they like completely halt. They refuse to continue the investigation and the search of the property until a healer comes out and purifies the site to cast out any like evil spirits that were dwelling on the property. Child, they weren't taking no chances. Not many of the group members are there at the time. Adolfo is not there. Sarah is not there. The groundskeeper was there, and police show him a picture of Mark and ask, like, have you seen this guy? The groundskeeper is like, yes, I did see him here on the property a couple days ago. Now, I don't know if the police was short-staffed or if this is just how things go down over in Mexico with authorities, but instead of them, like, bringing out a crew to, like, dig up around the property and continue the search, they make the members of the code who are actually on the ranch already and busted, they make them start digging. They give them shovels and tell them they better start digging and providing some kind of evidence and some answers real fast. This quickly led to the discovery of Mark's remains as well as 14 other people. 14 that they had sacrificed. Police find the machete just caked up with blood and hair, mason jars filled with remains and other people's parts. They also find a 55-gallon drum that was used for like boiling the flesh off the bone. During this whole ordeal, only e.l.f., one of the Hernandez brothers, Sarian, the other Hernandez brother who had actually led them back to the ranch, and 2 other followers were on site. So all of those people were arrested, and as soon as they got down to the station, honey, they sang like a choir of canaries, okay? They got to singing and telling all their involvement, all of the things that they had done. And by this time, news had gotten back to Adolfo and Sarah, like, not to return to the ranch, and pretty much everybody else. Like, they knew that it was a hot spot and that they could never return there because it would not be good for them. The ones who were captured, they didn't have a clue where Adolfo was at the moment, and so they could only tell what had happened up until the point where they got raided, and police were left to search for the crew, who they assumed had fled to the U.S. And these were in the days before they could like ping cell phones off of towers and check your bank transactions and all of those things. So they were completely lost looking for the rest of the crew, who were pretty much off the grid, y'all. What they were able to find out is that they did in fact go to the US and acquire fake IDs and then drove to McAllen, Texas, where they boarded a plane using those fake IDs to get to Mexico City. So they kind of put them on the right track to, you know, locating them, but they still had no idea where in the city they were. But because I got all of the tea, honey, I can tell you where they were. Sarah, Adolfo, and a couple of the other members who had evaded arrest, they had gotten this little apartment in Mexico City and they were hiding out there. An entire month goes by and authorities are no closer to catching them. They just know that they're somewhere hiding out near or in Mexico City, or at least that they were at some point. One day Adolfo is alerted by one of the members that the police are outside. He peeps out the window and he sees a police car just parked there. Now, the police were actually not even there for Adolfo. They were there for a completely unrelated incident. But because homeboy was very much paranoid, and rightfully so, he just assumed that they were there for him. And sis freaks out. He is convinced that they're here for them. They're gonna break in at any moment. He starts to burn the money on top of the stove. He is throwing money out of the window. I guess he didn't want them to be able to keep the money if he captured them. I don't know. But homie is throwing shit out of the window, and this gets the attention of the officer who wasn't even there for him in the first place. He was there for a whole different domestic disturbance job. But now he see money flying out the window, and so of course he's gonna come up there and check that out. Like, who wouldn't? Actually, I wouldn't. I think I'd be down there holding my shirt out, girl, just collecting the dollars as they fall. But he ain't me. So he went up there to check out the scene. Now, as the officer is approaching the apartment, Adolfo, in the most dramatic fashion ever, picks up a bundle of the money, throws it into the air, takes his machine gun, and just lets off fires through the money and out of the apartment, like towards the door where the police was. Just extra. Like, why make confetti out of the money? Why? Maybe it's because, like I said, he didn't want the police to keep the money. I don't know. The police return fire, and it's like a whole scene off a dramatic ass movie. For an entire 45 minutes, the two exchange fire from inside the apartment to outside the apartment. They just going back and forth. The police at this point have called for backup, honey. They deep outside and are demanding that they surrender themselves. But Adolfo was like, no, I'm not surrendering. He refused to be captured alive. So he instructs one of the members to take him and his lovers out. And Sarah is like, fuck that. Not me.
Now why am I in it?
And you could have did it.
See how I get wrong because you never apologized.
And so Adolfo was like, you can go down if you want to, but me and my male lover, we about to meet up on the other side. The follower does as he's instructed. He takes out Adolfo and his male lover, and now they just sitting in there pretty much waiting to be captured. Sarah, however, wasn't there for any of the things, child. Sarah attempts to flee the apartment, probably with a pocket full of money, because child, I wouldn't have tried to leave without no money. And you better believe, just as sure as shit stank, I would have been like Frankie on Set It Off when she had that bag of money and she saw the police, but sis just tried to run anyway. Like, that would have been me. But unfortunately, just like it didn't work for Frankie, it didn't work for little Sarah, because they got her. Later on in her interview with police, she said that Adolfo goes, let's all die, quote, but I didn't want to die. Sis, same. Me either. Baby, take me down to the jailhouse.
Man, I ain't worried about jail, man. Take me to jail.
Take me to jail.
Lock me up.
Lock me up.
Go away the kid. I ain't afraid of somebody in his ass.
Hey, whoa.
She faces charges for all of the crimes that they carried out on the ranch. And in May of 1994, she is sentenced to 62 years. The Hernandez brothers, they received 67 years each, which was then reduced to 50 years. In total, 14 members of the narco satanist cult were apprehended and faced charges, sent to jail, which is good. But you know what's really fucked up is that Mark's family was pretty much the only family that got closure. Granted, it is a horrible, terrible thing to experience as a family, but the families of the other, they never got the benefit of that closure at all. Unfortunately, they didn't have the benefit of two national police forces joining hands and helping them find out what happened to their loved one. They didn't have the media that Mark's family had. Like, the entire case was heavily centered around Mark. 14 were initially found on the ranch, but there were a total of 22 other victims in addition to Mark, all of which were Mexican. Only 9 of them were identified and returned to their families, but none of the others were. Police even suspected that there were even more victims than what they uncovered, yet they didn't bother to continue the search. So it was never verified, which completely sucks. Mama does not have a purple lip liner, so let's get ratchet. So I'm about to take a little bit of purple eyeshadow and just go along the outside of it, honey. We're gonna make it work. I'm not a fan of the ombre lip at all, but child, desperate times call for desperate measures, honey, and that was a desperate one. That is pretty much it for this story. This one was requested to me by Brene Brown. Shout out to you and your daughter. She told me that they watch my channels together. Shout out to you, sis, and little sis Junior. As always, I appreciate you all so much for watching me, and I will see you on Tuesday. Peace. Child, not me showing up every day in the same outfit. I done ordered me like three different little cookie robes, all of which will deliver before I have to film again. So we're gonna give this one a rest. Don't talk about me in the comments because this is like what, the third video. Y'all probably don't care. Hell, I don't care. A cult who believed in black magic and human sacrifice believed that the greater their victim. Which is he a Scorpio? Hold on. God damn it, he is a Scorpio. Another L. Him to, oh girl, eyebrow, why are you so long, baby? And how it works is that the priest, which he was leveling up, blah blah blah. El Padrino. Sound like reminds me of Drano, how I'm saying it, child. It's probably wrong, but I'm working on my Spanish this year. Baby, y'all not about to call me out on my Spanish today. Not today. Everything is allegedly, okay? All the translations are alleged today, okay? Is the word alleged or alleged? Is that to be a straight out or straight A? His order was what?